I'm going to make you the presenter.
Maybe that'll
There we go. Hey, I'm going to turn it off so he can take over.
it.
Hey, Jim. So tell us a little bit about Jim and I know through social media. We actually met. We're both very active in a Facebook group called Shark Tank Entrepreneurs. Last month, Jim and I decided to put together, people ask about retail licensing. I just talk about general business and marketing and bringing products to market and stuff. So we went to the organizers of the group, said, listen, could we give back a little bit? Because we see the same questions getting asked. And Jim wrote a book called Bringing Products to Retail. So last month we had it. We only had about 100 people on it that had come through it, but the feedback was really good because it was really solid, good information about how to bring your product to retail. So if you haven't had a chance to review it, Matt can send out an email link where you can go ahead and sign up. And it's about a 45-minute interactive conversation. Jim did a little presentation, and we had people literally all over the country asking us questions while we were doing it. So we were originally going to do that tonight, but we didn't have time to pull it off. So we're doing this kind of just for you guys in specific, and then we're going to take the same topic sometime in March and share that with this group. The Shark Tank Entrepreneur Group on Facebook, if you're not a part of it, has about 16,000 members. It's very active. I am also involved with some local entrepreneur programs at Collier County School District, and I've had 3 different people from the Shark Tank group come in and Skype to my students. And these are 16, 17-year-old high school juniors and seniors. So I just had, 2 weeks ago, had Mark Berginger from the Cubits program, who's on season 1 of Shark Tank. I've had Julie from Slausa. I have Jim DeBetta. I've actually had a product operations manager for TJ Maxx. He actually came into the school system. So it's a really interesting, if you ask, you'll get help. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because I asked Jim to do it and he didn't say no. He's not.
Dozens of questions that pop up every day.
A lot of it is the same kind of stuff, but it's really kind of cool that you get an opportunity to do that. So, so I'm going to talk about licensing from an inventor's perspective, because I kind of did it. But Jim, why don't you tell us, you've got a cool background, what you did. Jim wasn't really big in the optics business. So why don't you give them a quick overview of what you've done and how we can answer some questions. And while he's talking, maybe think of some questions and we'll ask.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and appreciate everybody having me on here tonight. And yeah, I've been down this path many times and still doing it, trying to live vicariously through other people and helping them. But when I had my company, back in the day, we were doing both. We were developing and selling products, but we also wanted to double dip, so to speak, and license if we could. And so, we first, our biggest foray or attempt to license, we said, you know what, we're not going to try to go to a small little corporation locally. We're going to go to a big entity. So we sought out a meeting with Nickelodeon. So everyone knows Nickelodeon, right? And at this time, we had a handheld line of magnifiers, and we had these, little kids' binoculars. And what we wanted to do was get, we figured, hey, if we did a licensing deal with Nickelodeon and we had one of their properties like SpongeBob or something on our products or associated with our products, wow, we could sell a lot more than what we could sell on our own. And so we went to Nickelodeon and, we started trying to hammer out a deal, and we were working with SpongeBob, and then they dropped the price on us. There's this, you got to pay a fee, right? Just to even obtain some of these licenses. And it was like high 6 figures, and we almost choked, because I think at the time we didn't even have that kind of revenue yet. So we're like, we're looking at each other like, how in the world are we going to pay a $800,000 licensing fee when we're doing, $200,000 a year in business? And so we said, listen, we think it's a little bit much for us. What else do you have in your portfolio? And so they showed us this little girl. Her name was Dora the Explorer. Not yet released, and they were really pushing on this. They said, oh, we could probably do this for like, 30 grand or 40 grand. It's a new property. We don't know how it's going to do. We're making a cartoon out of it, but, we're not sure where it's going to go. And so we tried to negotiate terms then and there. And then we went back to the office and said, yeah, I don't think we want to take a chance on this Dora thing. It's like, they're probably trying to just push some property that they're not even going to, do anything with. And of course, we know how big Dora is. And I remember like a year later, I was walking through Target, and I see, like, I was walking through like the kids' clothing section, and I see all these Dora pajamas and T-shirts. I'm like, oh crap! I think we made the wrong choice. But what we learned from that was, when you do these licensing deals, there's a lot of expectations on both sides of the fence. And I think that when you're an inventor and you approach a corporation with your sell sheet and with your patent or patent pending, and you've got a good, intellectual property portfolio behind you, and you've got leverage, it's up to you to try to strike the very best deal you can. I think a lot of people are intimidated by the process, but really it's as simple as having a great sell sheet and then just finding the companies you want to approach. And then of course, learning, what kind of conversations will be had between you and the potential licensee. But it happens. It's not easy, but people are getting licensing deals that aren't experienced in licensing. So it's just kind of learning some of the basics to help you get there.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, Jim hasn't seen this, but this is a iPad case we made based on Mossy Oak's camo pattern, so a competitor industry. I somehow convinced them to let me do a 500-piece order that I sold to a hunting distributor somewhere in the Midwest. And they came back to reorder them, and I couldn't give it back to them because I couldn't make the product. But they were willing, because our technology was different enough to figure out they could put it in other products. So they were willing to take a chance on us. But same stuff, I went to NASCAR because I thought NASCAR was cool.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted $400,000 for the category.
That's the problem with some of these.
And they wanted $850,000 for me to make iPhone cases. I was like, I got one order for $30,000. Like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
There are some ways around it. One of the ways that actually NASCAR turned us onto was find someone who has an existing license, if it's content that you're interested in. Approach someone who's already got a license and add to their category. That is much easier to get done. They don't want to tell you that because the licensing agents get more money. But if you have some content that you want to use, and they're very easy to find because you can call their licensing people and ask, hey, can I see the 5 different people that make T-shirts, right? Because NASCAR doesn't want any more T-shirts. You might have a great hat. Well, they don't want any more hat guys. In our case with the phone cases, they already had phone case guys. They didn't want another category. It was easier for us to kind of negotiate as a sub-license. Now you take less money, but it also gets you to market faster because they have distribution. So, and that was actually Brian Herbst, who actually runs NASCAR's licensing program. I think he's responsible for their television relationship right now. Was kind enough to do that, to kind of say, hey, we like what you're doing. I see what you're trying. We made a NASCAR a seat for them for their office. They thought it was really cool, and But ultimately, you got to just try asking people different questions because they're willing to help you, but there's rules they have to follow based upon the brands that they represent. And he's totally right with I remember I had the same conversation when I was at the licensing expo in Las Vegas, and I walked out of the NASCAR booth. It was they said they cut me a deal for only $400,000, and I could only give them the first year guarantee of $100K. They would negotiate it down to just $100,000 upfront licensing fee for a 3-year deal. I was like, oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, he who holds the brand holds the power, I guess. And it's funny, Brian. I did a deal with Mossy Oak as well in the binocular side of business when Mossy Oak and Realtree were very young, and that was a very infantile business at the time, and nobody knew where that was going. We actually jumped on that. We got to do a line of binoculars with one of the Mossy Oak patterns, and we went to Cabela's originally with our regular binoculars, and they said we don't want it. It's got to have camo, and it's got to be Mossy Oak or Realtree. We approached them. All we did, we were able to negotiate no upfront payments with them, but to pay them a higher per piece. Yep. So every time we dipped one of our binoculars in the Mossy Oak pattern, instead of paying, say, $50,000 up front and $1 per binocular, we just did like $5 or $6 per binocular, and we just padded our pricing because it was a high-end piece. So there are ways you can play around and get, but like you said, NASCAR, right? I mean, it's you would think that if the product is being pitched to the right buyers, that they're going to take it, and licensed stuff does well. I mean, we know that at retail, so it's a risky thing.
Right. So you guys have any along the lines of content? Do you guys have? I'll talk about a little bit with Jim leads, but do you guys have? Does that really apply to any of your businesses or not? Or right? Because content is, if you walk into a big box retailer, I don't remember the numbers, but I think like 60% of consumer products, wearables, apparables, outside of the food category, has some kind of licensing attached to it. It's crazy, right? There's, I think 11 or 12 major corporations have hundreds of the major brands that are out there. So it's definitely, we as a culture, especially Americans, consume a lot of that stuff. But you don't realize as an inventor, if you want to slap a logo, a University of Florida logo on a T-shirt and bring it to market, I'll pass this around. There's key codes in this. So if this shows up in market, some product person will look for a little color sequence, and they'll know that went to me. So they're actually very smart about doing that, and they really do. They have brands to protect, and they want to make sure when it shows up on eBay and it's not sold through an official channel retailer, they can kind of find out that, oh, Brian stole it and got a pattern on Google and tried to print something and develop it out, because obviously with digital. You got a question?
Yeah, I approached RV Camp World. I have something for them. And I just what he said, there's some that'll charge you up front,
Yep.
charge you up big, but I was surprised with the item that I got. I didn't get asked for up front or nothing.
It literally depends. Jim can offer this. Everything I was doing on this product, we were printing on leather. So we thought we could just go offer people hey, we can go build this line for Verizon and this line for Sprint and this line. And they absolutely were like, go get the licensed content, come back to us. So we had to put the brakes on and develop some of our own stuff. But then the business model became so upside down because we were looking at $2 or $3 million investment in licenses to even get product going. And it was me and my wife. Like we had no opportunity to do that. So ultimately we had to back away from these national brands because we just couldn't. We were just like everybody else. We were trying to figure out how to make stuff and get packaging and all that other nonsense. The licensing part was just incredibly complicated. Kathy's got a question.
If you were making a product and you purchased so many yards of that fabric or something for your product,
Yep.
is that still not okay because you're using, even though you purchased it?
It depends on the brand. They all have branding requirements. Typically, a brand manager will want to see a finished product based upon all the things that represent the brand. So in case of Mossy Oak, they've got lots of people that use their patterns. Now, if you go to Joann's Fabrics and make 50 pieces and sell it at a yard, sell it on a website, they're probably not going to bother you. But if you develop some new t-shirt based upon fabric you get at Joann Fabrics and it shows up in the marketplace, they're probably going to find out about it. And you have to really understand the risk. It's all up to you as the entrepreneur. What's the risk if they find it?
So is it best to approach them?
I would. If you're going to use content, you're always better to find who's making stuff. And the real trick is, and I've told this to several of my friends, go find someone who's already selling stuff,
Right.
and add it to their line.
I've done that with a couple of my products. One of my craft thing, I went to the manufacturer that's doing Loran. So my product now has Loran's name on it rather than my own.
Sure, and that's an example of licensing, right? You're selling on behalf of them, right? So you're licensing on their behalf, right? Go ahead, question?
I'm trying to figure out if my company is a fit here. Give me 60 seconds on this. We did licensing. We were working with a chocolate bar company that made this really cool product. They had these chocolate bars, and they put them in what looked like a cigar box. And we got the license for things like Scooby-Doo, Spider-Man. We did the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. You got to be old enough to know, remember them. And we had really great graphics on the bars. The boxes had, and they were like cigar boxes, 24 chocolate bars. We sold them, Toys R Us took Scooby-Doo. We had them for years, and we had other markets. So, we were just creatively thinking we were entrepreneurs. We're creatively thinking. So now, after listening to the type of licensing you're doing, we own a phone number that other companies want. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to walk into Quaker and say, listen, you're going to license 1-800-GRANOLA. You're going to put it on your product because you're going to do value-added marketing. Use one product to sell another product, like on the back. Remember, as a kid, you go and buy a cereal, and you bought the cereal because of the Captain Video decoder ring you got on the back to order. So I'm just wondering, is this the kind of licensing that you are familiar with? I know it works because we did it in the past. Everything that I'm mentioning, we've tried, but we did it in a small level just to see if the metric can actually work. Who's going to use a phone number, because we know that 800 numbers are called more than anything else, and we have a cool number. So we want to reverse this thing. I don't have the Scooby-Doo bars anymore.
Right.
But we do have a number that I want to give to Kellogg or other granola or any other companies that want to do a program on the back of their product, just like the old cereal boxes. What was the program on the back of the box to order in those days? Send this in or call 1-800-87. Here it's to order, call 1-800-GRANOLA, because our business model is simply order fulfillment, sales, marketing, order fulfillment.
Got it.
And that's what I'm interested to hear about. If you have any,
It's a tough one.
thought. Is licensing licensed? That's my question.
So
licensing.
So Jim, you want to take a stab at that, and I'll comment.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a gray area of where we are, but look, there's value in, something that's generic like that, and the value is as much as somebody's willing to pay for it. I think, if you have 1-800 granola, and Quaker Oats or Kellogg's or somebody wants that number, I mean, to them, look, for them to write a check, a 6-figure check to obtain a number is nothing for them. It might be big for us, right? But then again, they may not find any value in it. They could just say, we'll make it 1-800, something related to that. And I guess it depends on how you push that in front of them and how you could. If this were me going to them, I would create the marketing campaign and kind of like lay it out for them and attach, the 1-800 granola and show them how that would function, and that might lead to a quicker response. But it's not really a licensing thing. You're really just selling. I mean, kind of, you're selling intellectual property if you own, something.
That trademark. Gave us the trademark.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's value in that if you can get, again, remember, you're dealing with, big corporations. It's not hard for them to shell out something. Obviously, there are people in the business of collecting, domains and 800 numbers and to sell them. I mean, there's a business in that in and of itself. So I definitely think it's very viable. How much you would obtain for it? That's the $1 million question. But I definitely think it's viable, and why not? I mean, if you have it and it's not doing anything for you now, I'd be shopping it. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
As a marketer, I would look at, do you have 1-800granola.com?
Yes.
So you have all that stuff. So you have to go to them with a program because they have enough money from a branding perspective to do 1-877 granola.
Interesting. I agree with that.
So I think
have the program, because they're stupid. They're behemoths. They're so big. They don't think. So, but I'm just thinking is licensing.
I think that's more of an
asset
asset
sell
sale.
the number. We want to license.
Well, then that's just a royalty. So then it becomes a royalty, and that's really the aspect of licensing. You can call whatever you want.
Okay.
It's just really kind of, in my mind, it's kind of like you want to get a royalty for them accessing that number. Now, the big company is going to say, if I'm going to do it forever, then I'm just either going to buy it,
right,
acquire it, or I'm going to do something else and squash you like
More
a
than
bug.
happy to entertain your best offer.
There you go.
Is the line that we're making.
Interestingly enough, the Cubits folks, Mark and Lisa Berginger from Cubits Toys, they had Cubits.com. They didn't know anything. It's some molecular structure for something used in the technology industry. And just so happens, qubit computing got to be very popular a few years ago. So HP, IBM, a company in Canada, and Lenovo, he sent registered letters to their legal department, says, I'm selling Cubits.com. Will you take it? He sold it for something less than $100,000.
But still, see, you take a shot, right?
But now he's a toy company, right? So now he has Cubits Toys. So for him, he didn't dilute his brand by having Cubits Toys, right? No one was looking for a qubit to get a bunch of put together Lego stuff, right? He didn't dilute his brand. He didn't slow his come to market strategy. He just sold an asset he had that he wasn't utilizing. So that's a business question you just have to look at. It's an interesting model. I think someone in the marketing department of one of those companies would want to see the fully executed kind of idea of how it would work and how it would benefit them. That's what I would look at.
That's what I was saying, Brian, how if he puts together that marketing program for them, then it makes, you don't want them to have to spit, like you said, they may not be, some of those people aren't really thinking. If you do the thinking for them and lay it out to them, you're doing the work for them, then you have an opportunity for somebody to make a quicker decision, versus you just saying, hey, I've got this domain or I've got this phone number, you want to buy it. But if you say, hey, look, here's what you can do with this thing, and here's some, they may not even take your ideas, but at least you're showing that there's some worth to it, and you can see the value as a consumer, why somebody would want to utilize that number or domain.
Along the lines on a balancing act, and I have a friend that did this, be careful when you approach big companies. This piece of work art here, anybody here into cars?
Yeah.
So Michael Valley is a flame guy, has something called True Fire, right? So his girlfriend at the time was painting KitchenAid mixers for people that were like local celebrities, call them, in Seattle. So someone helped him get a meeting with KitchenAid. Never heard from him. 3 months later, KitchenAid has their own line of custom mixers from some other artists, right? Because they didn't sign a non-disclosure. They didn't sign it. So be careful, because The big guy, they don't have a moral compass, right? They just have a budget and they're just going to do something with it. Go ahead.
That's another question. When you do approach a buyer and you show them your product idea, and you do have a non-disclosure,
Sure.
but then they turn around and say, well, we're already working on something like that. What could your next line do besides?
Don't work with them. Just say no. Go on to the next company, because that comes up a lot. Where you should insist on them signing a non-disclosure. If the patented answer always is, well, our R&D department may have already been working on something or has been in discussions, and they kind of cover themselves by saying that. But I think good stewards of industry in our businesses, most companies will sign non-disclosures and will honor them. I mean, remember, not the non-disclosure is only as good as the people you're working with. So you could, again, if they're bigger and they could skirt the non-disclosure with all this legal stuff, then it doesn't matter. But if they're just flat out not willing to sign them, then you run the risk of them doing this, the blender thing here, where somebody all of a sudden 6 months later it's out there. So I would shy away, especially if you have choice to call on various companies. If one company says they don't want to do it, I'd move on.
Question: I've heard to ask if companies are willing to bring in open innovation, as in they're open to seeking ideas and using them from other people versus obviously stealing them. Is that something to bring up or ask about preemptively or to look up?
Yes, and more. Look, when I started in this business, there was no open innovation. It was like a closed deal. I mean, and now everyone, Procter and Gamble, and and all these big companies, and Nestle, and Black and Decker, and everybody, they're all looking. Somebody woke up and said, you know what? There are other people in this world besides the people who work for us that have great ideas, and why are we not tapping into this world of inventors and groups just like here? And there's a good shot that there's a department or a person in charge of open innovation, and especially at Fortune 1000 companies these days. So absolutely, you should dig into that and ask for sure.
And on that note, if you're not, I'm sorry, I'll get to your question. If you're not on LinkedIn as an owner and entrepreneur, you have to be on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
These guys, especially in corporate America, they're on it because it's Facebook for business, and it's a real tool. I use it every day. It is an unbelievably tool to connect, because if you provide value and talk to someone and provide them real value, there's a pretty good chance they're going to respond. Maybe not as quickly as they might if you pick up the phone, send them a text, send them an email, but it gives them an opportunity to check you out before they respond. So if they look at you and say, this guy's a bozo, or this guy's may have something cool, it's probably worth a little looky-loo. It is a wonderful tool because it gives you access to some really, really interesting people. Question, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right about that LinkedIn, because I get calls from underground utilities contractors.
Yep. It's a really, I know, because my business is less about inventing and product development right now, and it's more about kind of dealing with entrepreneurs and leadership and how to sell and market stuff. And I made a commitment in October to try to connect with at least one person a week. I now connect with between 5 and 10 a week. And for whatever reason, in my network, I'm in the top 8% of an influencer, whatever that means. And in other people like me, I'm in the top 5%. Now I'm out there providing content. I provide, sometimes it's motivational quotes. I say, here's an article I saw. If you're leading a business, you should think about this stuff. So it's really, it's quite clever. And if you're trying to ferret through the things to do that, my friend Dave Deedle was from a company called Sierra Trading Company, was in Naples just on Monday. And he probably says through LinkedIn, because he's been in the purchasing department for Cabela's, Bass Pro, and Sierra Trading Company for the better part of 25 years. He says he gets between 6 and 10 of those a week. And he doesn't necessarily always respond, but he has the right people. He's now the director VP, right? He doesn't respond to them, but he sends those folks to the correct category buyers, because in Sierra Trading's business, they're buying open inventory, kind of leftover stuff like TJ Maxx does. That's who owns them. And he's like, I can't miss that opportunity because I was too lazy. So he treats it very seriously. So it's a really, you never know. He said someone in his office bought 50,000 pairs of some kind of shoes they couldn't get, and they were stuck on someone else's dock. So now shoes that their competitors can't have, they're going to be able to put in all their stores and on their website because they literally responded to some email. So Kathy had a question.
Is there, going back to non-disclosures, is there any legal aspect to who signs a non-disclosure? And how do you know if that person is legally allowed to sign that non-disclosure?
Yeah, from Kathy, from my experience, usually, you can't have VP of sales. A lot of VP of sales tend to sign those things, and I don't always think that they're authorized to do it, or VP sales and marketing. I think you got to go up a little bit higher in the food chain. I think you need a real C-level person. And if a company's small enough, it could be the CEO, but you want a COO, a chief financial officer. A lot of times the CFOs in these companies are attorneys. But if you just get a salesperson signing off on that, that may not be enough protection. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to certainly tell you exactly, but I'd go as high as you can go. And I've done it. I've said, are you able to bind this non-disclosure? And they'll be like, oh yeah, whatever, and sometimes you just don't feel comfortable. You'd say, or get dual signatures. Say you want to get 2 signatures from executives in the company to kind of cover yourself. That's really the best you can do.
In a situation where if you really force that issue, that they may turn around and say, well, forget it, or if you can't.
No, I think, people do that. I think a lot of times, I think it's human nature to feel like if you're kind of too forward. But look, they understand. They get these calls. You're not the only one. I'm not the only one. Brian, we're not the only people calling them. They get these calls routinely. And I think as long as you do it, you could be firm but nice, and and get things done. If you're uncomfortable, you're the one who's going to lose. They're not going to lose. They have nothing to lose. You've got everything to lose. So again, if you feel like you're getting the runaround, the people aren't treating you well, good companies that are open innovation types or are looking are going to embrace your call, and they probably have a process and a policy. Hey Kathy, here's how we do it. Here's a form. Here's our NDA. Here's who, whatever. And it should be clean. If you're digging and fighting, you know what? Just move on, because it's not worth the risk.
I have a point that I was in the tech business for a long time, and we often were interfacing with lots of sensitive systems. So we, as a part of our NDA, we had a line in it that said that the signers of these were duly authorized representatives of the company, and that they are indeed, this is a binding, these are binding, they're binding representatives of the companies on each side of the equation.
Or they're stating that they are.
They're stating that they are. If they're not, that's their problem. That they have to defend that. If it was,
right, then it's that. Right, then the legal issue falls on them. Yeah.
This stuff I used, it was actually, so we had process patents and utility patents and all kinds of stuff. If someone wants to break it, they're going to figure out a way to break it, right? So you have to feel comfortable at some level that the basic trust is there. Because if you can't trust them from that perspective, you're probably saying, do I need this order that bad? Right. And then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and decide, did I make the right decision or did I make the wrong decision? And you have to live with that. So yeah, I mean, like Jim said, you have to go. They've seen it before, especially today. Maybe 10 years ago, not quite so much, but now it's probably pretty common practice.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably less commonplace to not have the ability to sign it. Now, if it's something, that say if I tried to go there and say sign a non-disclosure for an iPad case, they're like, dude, there's 10,000 iPad cases on eBay. Like, and here's you crazy, get out of town, right? So, but if we talk about business plans and production processes and how you interface, like, internal stuff, then they're going to want to protect themselves too. I always did mutuals. Everything I did that said it's good for me, it's good for you. And I generally didn't have problems getting through the legal departments with that stuff.
I want to hear you guys' take on the open innovation as well, because a lot of times we approach it as this worry of big companies taking ideas, but it's not generally good business for them to do so, nor to what extent would they not want to take the risk of, say, me rolling out a pretty nasty viral campaign about so-and-so stealing my idea. Is there a potential for that kind of steers companies into playing right and playing fair?
Yeah, social media is your friend. I mean, there's no question that companies think twice and 3 times now about doing that. And this was very common back, even 10, 15 years ago. Like in the retail business, as it is in licensing, there were certain retailers that if you brought a product to try to sell them the product, forget licensing. Okay, so you have a widget and you go to, Walmart, Target or something, you're just trying to sell it into there. There have been instances where the retailers would say, no, we're not really interested, but you know what, leave the sample. And then, 6 to 9 months later, that a version of your product was on the shelves. So it's kind of like in licensing, how they could steal, so to speak, unchecked. Now, come on, look, if you get a box of cereal and is like one, little marshmallow that's misshapen, you go on social media and go at them at it. I mean, 50,000 million people are going to boycott the cereal. It's like we hold the power as inventors. We have so much more more of an ability today to control conversations, to present products to companies. They're looking, they're seeking us out. But the whole, you've just got to be smart about how you do things and how you approach companies, and you've got to feel comfortable. And right, if they develop a reputation for stealing ideas or knocking things off, it's going to hurt them in the end. And believe me, the reputation will spread very quickly, and before you know it, they'll fall behind when inventors and bright minds bring their products to their competitors.
I was going to say the same thing, right? So if you have an open innovation and I take it to Procter & Gamble, and if I take it to Unilever because they're messing with me, that's the biggest, right? The marketplace ultimately settles that score.
Yeah.
Because it's an open innovation, not only company A, but company B or company C and D are all going to have access to it. And ultimately the market's going to kind of change how people think about that. So that's a good point. I don't know much about that. That's just my commentary on it. But, we lived in the world with this leather stuff. It was we all had this patent, and it was actually very clever, and there was a bunch of reasons why they got it. But ultimately the business behind it broke because of two emotions, fear and greed. And that's basically what killed it. A lot of people spent a lot of money, and a lot of people's lives were ruined over two people literally sitting across the table, and two emotions were the fear of letting someone else getting it and greed. So in that case, it was just a bad situation. We'll talk about that when Jim's gone. So
yeah, killer of many deals, absolutely.
Well, the band might get back together, but we're not going to talk about that. Any other questions for Jim?
There was one that was submitted previously by Mike. We wanted to ask, what are the key elements of a sell sheet? I believe you guys may have covered that in last month's meeting with a bit more detail.
Jim's he's the expert on this.
I think the best way to do it ultimately is, Matt or Brian, I can get you guys a couple examples of great sell sheets and you can see. But I think the key is you got to keep it short. Look, I work with inventors. I've been working with inventors forever. And one thing I've learned about inventors is they're very passionate about their ideas, and they tend to kind of, talk about them and write about them too much to the point where somebody who's trying to make a decision from a licensing perspective is just not going to want to read a 12 or 15 story about the product. The sell sheet should really be a page. That's it. Description, what you could say, the old elevator pitch, what you can say in 30 seconds about the product is all you should write. And then hopefully you have a picture or a rendition of the product that you can show. And then you have your little bullet points, your benefits and features. This product is faster, it's better, it's lighter, it's more cost effective, it will save you money, it does this, it does that. That's the purpose of that sell sheet, is to get interest from a potential licensee. It's not going to sell it, you're going to sell it. But if you put together a great marketing piece that's one page, that's short, that is attention grabbing, gets to the point, what do you think they're going to do when they get that email? They're going to say, oh, this looks really cool, I'm going to email this person back. Hey, tell me more. Then that's your stage to start talking about why and what it is. And but I can get those to the group here so you guys can see what effective sell sheets look like.
Jim, I've got the ones we sent to the group last month.
So okay, yeah, and those are great examples of what they are. So perfect.
My comment on those is, since it's your first, we talked about this last month with Jim. If it's your first time talking to a retail, a buyer, maybe the guy around the corner, right? Could be the owner of Base Hardware around the corner. Do a nice job. Be proud of it. Spend a little bit of money on graphics. Get a pro to do it. And if you can't spend a lot of money, go to a website called Fiverr.com with 2 R's, or go to Upwork. And you can get one done for probably $25. And you're just going to put it into the ether, and you're going to tell people exactly what you want, and you're going to say, wow me, and they're going to come back and say, this is unbelievable.
That sell sheet is really the most important piece. I agree with Brian. It's cheap to get them done today, but if you're going to spend money on anything, that sell sheet is your gateway. That's how buyers are going to know what in the world you'll have, because you're not going to be there to tell the story. And if you could email that out to the decision makers and send it to a lot of companies, remember, this is a numbers game. You approach 2 companies to do a licensing deal, you may not get a deal, but if you approach 15 or 20, you're going to get a few people that may show interest. But if that sell sheet's really poorly done, or it's too long, or it's boring, or it doesn't just get to the heart of what it is, or what the product's about, or why this company should want it, then you're not going to get responses. It's like any marketing piece, Brian, you know this, any marketing piece of any kind, it has to grab the attention of that person that's looking at it. And again, yeah, you can go to sites like Fiverr. There are a million people who will whip up something for you just give them the information and they'll make it all pretty and get it back to you and you're in business.
Now there's downsides with it too. I'm not telling you it's perfect, but if you're stuck and you want to get something in a day or two and you don't know anybody, you don't know where to go, there's these resources and they really are. I mean, some of them I've done them where they're really cool and I've done some where they stunk and are awful, right? So if they stink, you just go to the next one, right? That's kind of how it's the cost of being in business.
What was the name of the first site?
Fiverr, Fiverr.com. It started out of the UK. So they talk about everything costs a fiver. So that's kind of where it came from, right? And there's all kinds of nonsense you can get done on there. And it's not very good, my take, it's not very good for anything really complicated, but something very simple, like, you know, a logo that you have an idea of a sketch, and then you want to turn it into a little fancier with a little palm tree here. I was working on a project for a client called Bimini Art. It was an outdoor art project. I just wrote Bimini Art, and I drew a little palm tree, and I said, I think I like this font, and the next day I had this beautiful font that was $5.
And remember, for these sell sheets, you're providing the content. You're the one telling the person what you want on it, so they're just going to make it pretty. So you should probably have a good experience that way. They're
not going to provide any guidance as far as what you should say at all.
Right. You're the content. They make it pretty. That's it.
Yeah, they're not going to say, well, we should put this over here, maybe a button. You're going to get, I mean, you give them all the elements and tell them what you kind of want, and they're going to come back, and it's pretty neat. I mean, it just becomes we live in a global.
Or you know what, better yet, Brian, when you send those examples of the sell sheets around, you send that to the person, say, make it look like this with my information. Done. That's the best way to do it.
Make changes, right? I think for licensing, I think you need to have for content. I think it's 30% difference or three material changes to what you do. So it needs to be inspired by, not copy from. It's a fine line, but you know, chances are someone's not gonna. I mean, you're not stealing their logo exactly. You know, everybody wants a logo like Apple, but if it's the Apple logo that's just a pear, you know, or a little different shape, they're gonna find out about it, right? There's actually image search tools that are available that these hacks go after and tell you you've used an unlicensed image on your website, and they'll come back to you and say, hey, you owe me $100 for this or $1,000 because I got hit with a blog post. I just put some picture about a car doing a burnout on a blog post. I went to Google and typed in, you know, Dodge Challenger burnout. I got a cease and desist letter, said I owed them, you know, $1,200. I told them to pound sand and deleted it, but like they can spend the money to come chase me down, I guess. But, oh no, it's out now. But it's a really neat thing. We'll make sure to get everyone. Jim sent a couple examples out. There's two completely different examples from a look and feel, but they just show. They're both one page. They just demonstrate. One of them had a bunch of physical stuff of how big it sits on the shelf, and
right. But yeah, it gets to the heart of the matter. That's it.
That's it.
Jim, on this topic, back to the licensing question about the 1-800-CANOLA, would you use a similar type sell sheet of benefits, whether you're presenting an intellectual property such as a phone number or a logo or a name or even a patent versus being an entrepreneur business owner who has a product looking to seek a license?
Well, I think it's a little different. I mean, you know, if you're just trying to sell, like you said, you know, one piece of intellectual property, again, it's benefits and features. I mean, everything comes down to that. But a product obviously is a physical thing, so you know, there's more to show about the product, and there's a consumer component. So if I'm trying to license a tool to Black & Decker, I've got to have that sell sheet, you know, appeal to Black & Decker as to why their customer or you know, customers of tools would want it. But in this particular case, you might be able to expand on this sheet, make it a few pages, and make it into a presentation. Because again, Brian and I were mentioning before how when you're presenting this to the company, you want to show them and be proactive and show them how this could work from a marketing perspective. That's going to be more of a presentation deck than it is a one-pager. But again, you know, you've got to get that initial interest. And if that means, look, keep everything short and sweet, no matter what you do. Selling to me is always a 2 or 3 part process. It's not, you know, it's not like the old, you know, boiler room days when, you know, kids are selling stocks, you know, on the phone and boom, you know, and that's it, and we're getting you, you know. This is more like, hey, and it worked, right? But with product, I think you've got to come out or it's a license. Your job is just to get people interested, okay? Capture attention. If you capture somebody's attention, then you can do your thing versus getting on the phone and trying to get a licensing deal going on a first phone call. Very difficult. I think, people like to visualize things. They like to see what it is that they, they can look at, and it's not confrontational, right? You get a great sales sheet, you email it to somebody. Hey, I've got this 1-800, I got a domain. Here's what it is. Here's why it's good for you. Boom, I'd love to talk further. Then when you get them on the phone, then you could talk to them all day long about why and how. But just, people don't have attention spans anymore. I swear. It's like you talk to anybody, they're looking at their phones, they're texting, they don't pay attention. Nobody wants to read something long unless they ask to look at something that's more in depth. So hit them quick. Boom, this is what I got. Love to talk further. And just get them excited. Then if they want it, they'll come to you and say, yes, I'd like to hear more about it. That's your invitation to go crazy.
Yep. And Jim, I want to let you know, nobody has their phones out. They're sitting on the edge of their seats.
Right. I know. Yeah. Right. Just like my kids always say, I can't even have a conversation with anybody in my family. It's like, I have my kids texting me from 10 feet away. Hey, yeah, can you get up? Like, really? I can see you. You don't need to text me.
Patty's got another question.
Okay. If you just send that sheet out and you waited a week or 2 weeks, a month, whatever you say the norm is, and you don't hear from them, should you send it again?
Actually, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, what do you say? Go ahead, Jim.
That's a great question. I've learned personally, you should not call the next day and then repeatedly. That will end the conversations with that. I think a week is fair, but I think what happens is after 2 or 3 weeks, if you're not getting a response, sometimes I like to try to, send them something or an article or something to kind of, instead of just saying, hey, did you get my email last week? Hey, did you get my email from 2 weeks ago? Hey, did you get it from 3 weeks ago? Sometimes it's, do a little research on that second or third follow-up. Just say, let's say it's a product and you're trying to license it. Hey, I was in your stores and I saw this article about this competitive brand, whatever. Sometimes you got to find different reasons to reach out to people, or sometimes I just find different times of the day to reach out to people. A lot of these buyers or potential licensees, they're busy during the day, but when on their way to work or at lunch or at night, I've had people respond to me on weekends. Sometimes sending something on a Saturday or Sunday has worked for me because people have their phones all the time and they'd be like, oh, look at this, Kathy, or whatever, and hey, look at that, I'll answer her. But yeah, I think you can't follow up every 2 or 3 days. I'd say, once a week, and Mondays are the worst days for a lot of these people because Monday, I know at retail anyway, is in corporations, a lot of planning meetings and things like that. So I always like that midweek or Friday, like when people want to get out of the office and they'll actually sit at their desk and respond to things. But I think a week or so in between is fair.
When you do that follow-up, let's say if it is even a month later or 2 weeks later, would you resend that sheet again? Or
yes, because you know what they're going to say when they send it? Oh, yeah, I got your email. Can you resend it again? I get that all the time. So that's a good idea. Just basically re-forward the email you sent and just add on to it, but always send that sell sheet.
I got one comment on that. There's this thing that's still in business called the United States Postal Service. I actually send handwritten cards, clipped out articles. I printed out an article that I printed online, put it in a handwritten note, and sent it to the CEO of the company, and he called my cell phone.
Nice. Yeah, that works.
So, and again, everybody's different. You got to keep trying. Actually, one of my classes I'm teaching, we talk about automation of email and marketing stuff. You have to figure out what's good for each customer. They're all different. But the question is, most entrepreneurs send one letter, one email, one thing. Oh, I never heard from them, right? You have no idea how many other million things they are, but you have to figure out what makes sense for them, and you just have to keep testing it until you find a method. I had a friend that sent, he fixed industrial control boards for food service companies. He sent a big box like Matt has here with a video that showed about his company, with a cake from someone in New Orleans with paper plates and cookie stuff, and it cost him $250, right? He FedExed it to him, overnighted, first delivery. He got a 100% close ratio. He closed like $350,000 worth of business for like a $600, I mean, maybe a couple $1,000 investment. Again, everything's relative. If you're selling a $3 product, you can't afford to do that. But if you're selling a higher end product or service, you have some more opportunities to do things like that. You have to be different because everyone else, if you do the same thing as everyone else, you're just going to fall into the bucket. A question over here.
Actually, not a question, but comment to what they were just talking about. I've been doing, I do a lot of research on email marketing and such like that. And I came across an article that said the best time to send an email to someone that's important would be between 8 p.m. and 12 a.m. during the week and any time on the weekend.
Yeah, that's what we were saying before. Like I said, on a Saturday or Sunday, these buyers that just everyone's got their phone with them all the time. So it's sending an email on Monday morning at 11 o'clock. Guess what? Probably not going to get answered. I agree.
Right. But between 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. in the morning, that 4-hour period, and on weekends, they said you get a better response rate.
Yeah, you know why? People wake up. I mean, what do you do? If I get an email after I shut my phone off, I get up in the morning. What do? You open up your phone and there's all your emails. So yeah, to be one of the first ones in their inbox, yeah, that's a smart strategy.
Cool. Good. Yeah, a couple questions. Ed?
Well, I just had a comment because the sell sheet's basically the resume for your product.
Right.
And when you hear people talk about resumes, one of the things I've always heard, if you go for an interview or anything, I worked with a woman who was, she always had a candy bar or something whenever anybody did anything for her, and then she would actually handwrite thank you notes. So if you've got somebody that you send an email to and you handwrite them a thank you note, include your sell sheet in it, of course. But mail it to them, and that's something that they don't get. They're sick of emails, and if you can do anything to make that stand out, and you send them a nice little handwritten card, and they're going to remember that, and maybe that makes it down the road just a little bit further.
Right. You got to keep testing.
I've done the same thing. I mean, I buy shoes, brand new shoes, but for sale. Take one of the shoes and send it to somebody, and put a note. Since I got a foot in the door, can you speak and spend 5 minutes with me?
Yep.
And it actually, people respond back to that. It's amazing. They laugh about it, they talk about it, and they'll respond back to it.
I came from the IT industry, and one of my CIO friends actually took a meeting once because they sent him a car or remote control car, and he said, if you take the meeting, I'll give you the remote. And it was like $100 car. Unfortunately for the guy, he was during the .com craze, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. He's like, well, yeah, I'm not buying from you. You have no chance, but thanks for coming in and giving me the other half of the car, right? So there's a concept called 3D mail where it's called lumpy mail. And you actually send something that's lumpy because they're going to put it to the side and look at it. And you have a better chance of opening it. So we as entrepreneurs and business owners have to do something differently. In our market, you wouldn't know this, Jim. Billy Fusillo drives you crazy because you can't stand his ads, but everybody talks about him.
Right.
And every one of his ads has a call to action and has a time frame. This month he's giving away whatever, microwave ovens. Next month he's giving away a cruise, right? So is he spending the same amount of money as the other guys? Probably. Is he more memorable? Is he more fun? Does he have some personality? Yes, absolutely. I'd rather do business with someone that I actually might remotely enjoy the experience than someone I know is going to be, our cars are cheaper than the next guy. Well, of course that's your response, right? Who cares, right? Who gives a crap? So,
Is there a certain email title or words that you have found most successful for sending them?
you can answer that because I'm not going to go there. Do you have an answer to that? Is there an email title?
Look, whatever. Look, I've done all kinds of crazy things. Who knows? Sometimes when you get desperate, you start doing wacky things. I don't know.
There's a whole school of thought that says you should be completely memorable. Some people want you to be completely professional. I tend to try to tie it into some personal connection, especially if it's a one-off email and not an automated email. You want to create some personal connection. Like I'm following up on the letter I sent to you going, how's the chocolate? I'll send a picture of a stain on my shirt, say, look what I did when I ate the cake, right? Something just to get them to break. Because I sold in New York City, right? People will step over. Jim's from New York. He's from Long Island. I'm from New Jersey. Once you break the barrier, they're your best friend. But if you see them on the street, they're going to elbow you and knock you down. And so you have to figure out different ways to break. And everyone reacts differently. And it really just depends on what's the right approach. So test like crazy. Find what doesn't work. What did Edison do? Found 10,000 ways that light bulb didn't work. Marketing is no different. Coming out with products is absolutely no different. You just need to think of different ways of things that don't work, and that's what we do all day. So, any other questions for Jim? How much time you got? Yeah, I know you're on.
I'm running in a second, so any questions would be great.
I'm not going anywhere, but Jim is.
I got one quick question. Who wins at foosball there?
Oh yeah, well, not me. I can tell you that much right now. my kids kill on that. You know, I try to keep up, but you know, listen, guys, I can tell you this. You know, this business licensing, no matter what it is that you're licensing, I think this kind of ties into what we were just talking about being memorable. I've gotten more compliments on my persistence than anything, and I tend to not be as creative. I'm just not that type. Like where, you know, you guys, people will come up when I hear some people, I'll send the shoe, I'll send the cake. You know, I've never been like that. I think I've just been a pain in the butt, and I think a lot of people, buyers, will come back later and say, "Listen, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed. I really appreciate that you hung in there, that you didn't give up, that you emailed me 100 times over 6 months." I think at the end of the day, through all the cutesy stuff, if you stop, you lose. The biggest deals I've ever gotten done were the ones that took months, a year, and it's frustrating. You want to cry, you want to give up. You just got to keep going, and yes, be cute and fun in between, and try to do funny things, but keep doing them, because I think that where a lot of the failure rate comes is people try something once or twice, they get frustrated, they quit, they throw up their hands, and then, you know, somebody in that world a year later comes along and eats their lunch and does it for them. So they, you know, people are busy, and you know, they see those emails, and if you just consistently stay with it and change it up a little bit, even if they give you a no, at least you're getting an answer. And I think that's the key to just being persistent and staying on top of it, and, you know, and pushing. And I think that's the goal. So.
All right. Anything else for Jim? I'm going to let him go. I think he's going to go pick up his kids.
Yeah, I got there all over the place. I know this is kind of, you know,
School bus is gotta go.
yeah. But you know, listen. Yeah, any questions? You know, we're available. You know, Brian. You know, we'll get the sell sheets out. If anybody has additional follow-ups, they can get to me. I'm happy to answer them and email back or whatever. Not a problem.
All right, cool. I'm planning on staying, so I've got some comments on what Jim talked about. So, Jim, thanks for coming.
Hey. Good luck. Hang in there.
See you guys. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.